In the heart of New York City's glittering skyline, where towering skyscrapers pierced the clouds like needles of ambition, a tiny cry echoed through the sterile halls of the most exclusive hospital in the world. It wasn't just any cry, it was the faint, desperate wail of a newborn fighting for his life. Alexander Hart, the billionaire tech mogul whose empire spanned continents, stood frozen outside the neonatal ICU, his usually unshakable facade crumbling as doctors delivered the devastating news. His son, little Ethan, had been born with a rare genetic disorder. "No hope," they said, their voices clinical and cold. "We've exhausted every option. Prepare for the worst." But in that moment of utter despair, fate was about to weave an unlikely thread, a poor girl from the forgotten streets of Brooklyn, who would do the unthinkable to rewrite destiny itself. Alexander Hart wasn't always the cold, calculated billionaire the world knew him as. Born into modest means himself, he had clawed his way to the top through sheer grit and innovation, building Hart Tech into a behemoth that revolutionized artificial intelligence. But success came at a cost. His marriage to Elena, a socialite more interested in galas than genuine connection, had been a whirlwind of passion that fizzled into obligation. When Elena discovered she was pregnant, it was supposed to be the missing piece, the legacy Alexander craved. Yet, complications arose during pregnancy, and Ethan arrived prematurely, his tiny body ravaged by a condition called spinal muscular atrophy type 0, a merciless disease that robbed infants of muscle control, leaving them unable to breathe or swallow on their own. The best specialists money could buy shook their heads. Gene therapy trials were years away, experimental treatments had failed, and organ matches were non-existent. Alexander threw millions at research foundations, hired private jets to fly in experts from Europe and Asia, but nothing changed. Ethan lay in his incubator, tubes snaking across his fragile form, his big blue eyes, mirrors of his father's, pleading for a miracle that seemed impossible. Across the city, in a cramped one-bedroom apartment where the heat flickered on and off like a bad habit, lived Maria Lopez. At 22, she was the epitome of quiet resilience, working 2 jobs to support her ailing grandmother, Abuela Rosa, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was just 5. Maria scrubbed floors at a downtown office building by day and waited tables at a dingy diner by night, her dreams of becoming a nurse buried under mountains of bills. She had a smile that could light up the darkest alley, but behind it hid a well of sorrow, years of watching loved ones slip away, powerless to stop it. One rainy evening, as Maria mopped the lobby of Hart Tech's headquarters, she overheard a conversation between executives. "The boss's kid, it's bad. They're saying he won't make it past a month." Her heart twisted. She didn't know Alexander personally, but she'd seen him in the halls, distant, driven, a man who commanded rooms without a word. That night, as she cared for Abuela Rosa, feeding her soup with trembling hands, Maria couldn't shake the image of a helpless baby fighting alone. Days turned into a blur for Alexander. He barely slept, haunting the hospital like a ghost, his phone buzzing with board meetings he ignored. Elena, overwhelmed by the grief, retreated to their Hamptons estate, leaving him to face the nightmare solo. "We could adopt," she suggested over a tearful call, but Alexander refused. Ethan was his blood, his hope for redemption from a life of isolation. The doctor suggested palliative care, making the baby comfortable until the end. Alexander raged against it, firing one specialist in a fit of fury, only to beg him back hours later. In his lowest moment, he wandered the hospital corridors, ending up in the chapel, where he hadn't prayed since childhood. "Why him?" he whispered to the empty pews. "Take me instead." Maria's path crossed Alexander's by chance, or perhaps by design. She had volunteered at the hospital's community outreach program, reading stories to sick children on her rare days off. One afternoon, while delivering donated books to the pediatric wing, she glimpsed Ethan through the ICU window. His tiny chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, monitors beeping like a somber symphony. Something stirred in her, a fierce, maternal instinct she didn't know she possessed. That evening, she researched the disease obsessively on her cracked phone screen, learning about the slim chances of survival without a breakthrough. But then she stumbled upon an experimental procedure, a stem cell transplant from a compatible donor, combined with cutting-edge gene editing. It was risky, unproven, and required a near-perfect match. Maria, who had donated blood before, decided on a whim to get tested. The results came back 2 days later. She was a match. Not just any match, a rare, 1 in a million genetic compatibility due to a shared distant ancestry. The unthinkable began to take shape. Maria approached the hospital anonymously at first, offering her stem cells. But the doctors explained the catch: the procedure wasn't just a simple donation. It involved harvesting from her bone marrow under general anesthesia, with potential complications like infection or long-term pain. Worse, for the transplant to have the best shot, it needed to be timed perfectly, and Maria would have to undergo preparatory treatments that could leave her weakened for months, jeopardizing her jobs and her ability to care for Abuela Rosa. "It's not just your cells we need," the lead doctor confided. "We'd require you to stay close, monitor your health, perhaps even cohabitate in a sterile environment if complications arise." Maria hesitated. She wasn't rich, she had no safety net. Losing her income could mean eviction, and Abuela Rosa's medications cost a fortune. But as she visited Ethan secretly, watching his little fingers twitch, she saw her own lost childhood reflected back. "Someone has to fight for the ones who can't," Abuela Rosa had always said. Maria made her decision: she would do it, but on her terms. Alexander learned of the donor through a frantic call from his medical team. "We have a match, Mr. Hart. But she's insisting on meeting you first." Skeptical, he agreed, expecting some opportunist angling for a payout. Instead, he found Maria in a quiet hospital lounge, her worn jeans and faded sweater a stark contrast to his tailored suit. "I'm not here for money," she said firmly, her brown eyes locking onto his. "I just want to know why this baby matters to you. Because if I'm risking everything, I need to believe it's worth it." Alexander, taken aback, opened up for the first time, about his lonely rise to power, his failing marriage, his fear that Ethan was paying for his sins. Maria listened, sharing her own story of loss and survival. A bond formed, fragile at first, built on shared vulnerability. She agreed to proceed, but the challenges were just beginning. The preparation phase was grueling. Maria moved into a guest suite in Alexander's penthouse for monitoring, a world of luxury that felt alien to her. Crystal chandeliers and marble floors couldn't mask her anxiety. Abuela Rosa was placed in a top-notch care facility, funded by Alexander, but Maria worried constantly. The treatments weakened her: nausea, fatigue, hair thinning in patches. At work, her bosses fired her for missing shifts, and whispers followed her: "That poor girl thinks she's a hero." Meanwhile, Ethan's condition worsened, infection nearly claimed him, forcing an emergency intervention. Alexander, watching Maria's sacrifice, began to change. He visited Abuela Rosa, learning Spanish phrases to make her laugh, and for the first time, he delegated heart-tech duties, prioritizing family. Tensions peaked during the harvest procedure. Maria lay on the operating table, her mind racing with doubts. What if it doesn't work? What if I can't care for Abuela anymore? The anesthesia took hold, and in her dreams, she relived her parents' accident, vowing not to let another child suffer alone. Hours later, she awoke in pain, but the cells were viable. The transplant followed, a tense 48 hours where Ethan's body fought the invasion. Rejection loomed like a shadow, fever spiked, monitors alarmed. Alexander and Maria waited together, sharing coffee and stories. In a raw moment, he confessed, "I built an empire, but I couldn't save my son." "You did." Maria shook her head. "We're saving him together. That's what family does, even if it's not by blood." Miraculously, Ethan's body accepted the cells. Days turned to weeks, and signs of improvement emerged: stronger cries, voluntary movements. The gene editing, bolstered by Maria's donation, began repairing the damage. But resolution came with emotional reckoning. Elena returned, jealous of Maria's role, sparking a confrontation. "She's just a maid," Elena sneered. Alexander, seeing clearly now, ended the marriage, realizing love couldn't be bought. Maria faced her own crossroads. With Alexander's help, she enrolled in nursing school, her dream revived. Abuela Rosa recovered enough to meet Ethan, cradling him with tears of joy. Months later, Ethan thrived, a chubby, giggling toddler defying all odds. Alexander, transformed, founded a foundation for rare diseases, with Maria as its ambassador. Their unlikely friendship blossomed into something deeper, a quiet romance born from shared trials. Maria often reflected on that fateful decision. The unthinkable wasn't just the donation, it was opening her heart to a world beyond survival, trusting that one act of courage could heal many wounds. As Ethan's laughter filled the penthouse, Alexander turned to Maria. "You gave him life, but you gave me hope." She smiled. "Hope is what we make, together." And in that, they found their inspiring truth. No matter how vast the divide, wealth or poverty, despair or determination, one person's unthinkable choice can bridge it all, reminding us that true strength lies in compassion, not conquest. If this story touched your heart and left you inspired by the power of human kindness, hit that like button to show your support. It means the world to creators like me. And if you want more emotional tales that dive deep into the soul, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could change your perspective. What's your takeaway from this? Share in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you.